Greetings, this is Dr. Doug Meints with my pal, Rosie the doll. I'm here to represent Mom Brain 101, a company I started several years ago to help moms discover their brain type, have less stress, less anxiety, less depression, and actually get the life they truly deserve. With that in mind, what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about the bottom line or the baseline for brain activity. 100 billion brain cells, 100 billion neurons. Not sure who counted those, but you must have gotten pretty darn tired. So I'm going to demonstrate that by showing you Rosie the doll. Now Rosie's got some very interesting features. On the back of her hand, she has these little silver tabs. When I push a tab, nothing happens, either left hand or right hand. But when I connect the dots, when we close the electrical circuit, look what happens with Rosie. And this is the same thing that happens inside your brain when all of those 100 billion neurons are adequately connected. Now, too many connections can create anxiety. Too few connections can create depression, a feeling of aloneness, and many other things that we're going to talk about in the next 10 minutes. So let me demonstrate this. All right, my hand is going to touch the back of her right hand. My right hand is going to touch the back of her left hand, and then you'll see that she works.
Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies.
Now we all recognize those tunes. As soon as I let go of her hand and break that electrical connection, she no longer works. If I were to hold my hand on that and let her sing for days and days and days, she will become anxious, distressed, and sooner or later, she's going to run out of gas. It's called batteries. So we've got our own batteries inside our nervous system, and that connects our brain to our bodies, hearts, lungs, all the other organs that make us human. So what I'm going to do now, what I'd like to do next actually, is show you a very, very small version of what you own as a brain. So there's a side view. And you'll notice this walnut-looking surface. That's called the cortex. And it's only about 1/4 of an inch thick, but it has lots of surface area because of all the wrinkles that you see. So if you were to lay that all out, it would cover quite a large area. Keeping that in mind, let's begin this way. I'm going to point to the board behind me, so stick with me here for a minute. We're going to look at slow brain waves, moderately paced brain waves, and I'm going to back up on that here a little bit, and then really fast brain waves. I'll show you what they do. And when done using a QEEG, it can tell me how your brain operates in different circumstances. One is sleep, and number 2 is actively doing work. Number 3 is relaxed focus, and sometimes even ideation or creativity or imagination. So we'll go over those things for you. So brain waves are just subsets of what I was talking about before. It's just different ways to look at energy that comes from the brain through your skull and the scalp and your hair to a cap I place on your head. So let's take a look. I'm going to start on the left side of the board for you. And what I'm going to show you is the slowest brain wave that your brain or cortex puts out. It's called delta. It's not important to remember the names at this point. Just know it's kind of like first gear. If you're driving your car down the street and you're going really slow, just like this one right here, first gear is called delta, and delta is there. It's a very slow, sleepy brain wave, and because it's that slow and sleepy, that's exactly what it does for you. If you can dial your brain into this slow state, there's a really good chance you're going to get all 4 stages of sleep, including the last stage after about 90 minutes, called REM sleep, rapid eye movement. And every 90 minutes throughout the course of the night, your brain goes through light sleep, deep sleep, and this REM state. Then it goes right back to light sleep, deep sleep, REM state until you wake up in the morning. We're going to talk about sleep later on. It's one of the huge things that allows your brain to regulate itself at a normal pace. So you've got a 4-speed car here. First gear is called delta, and delta is wonderful. In fact, all 4 gears are wonderful. But if you get stuck in delta, they have a name for that. It's called a coma. You don't want to live there. So short of a coma is nice, deep, restorative sleep. And that's exactly what your brain can do when it's given a chance to rest. This is why sleep is so important. This is when your brain has the opportunity to repair itself. I don't know about you, but the last time I parked my car in my garage and it was broken, I woke up the next morning to try to start it, still broken. Your brain, on the other hand, can repair itself as long as you give it what it absolutely needs. And we'll go over those types of elements in future videos. It's one thing to know how your brain works. It's another thing to know how to fix your brain when it doesn't work. It should do it on its own, but if it's not operating at the right speed, it won't have the ability to do that. So keep that in mind. The second gear, as we wake up in the morning, we start to enter this state called theta state. It's a little faster. Think of it this way. If it's difficult for you to see the car has 4 forward gears, I want you to look at it this way. It's almost like a piano keyboard for you musical types. On the left side of that keyboard, by the way, there's 88 keys with black ones and white ones. On the left side are the low keys. On the right end of the piano keyboard are the high-pitched tones. Faster, shorter strings, that type of thing. So as we wake up in the morning, we enter second gear. This is right before you have your cup of coffee. Your brain will go into this very creative state. Imagination is spurred here, and new ideas come here very readily. Interestingly enough, there's a story about Thomas Edison. When he was trying to build that light bulb, he couldn't figure out what type of metal to use as a filament for the bulb. Finally, after hundreds and hundreds of tries, he sat in his rocking chair after his noon meal, feeling pretty sleepy anyway, and discovered that somehow, he knew what theta was. He put a rock in his hand and a pie tin below the armchair. And as he rocked and started to fall asleep, his hand would relax, he would drop the rock, would hit the pie pan, would wake him up, and you write down whatever came to mind. And that's how the tungsten filament came about. Pretty cool stuff. So could you use that? Absolutely. If you're trying to solve a problem, you just need to relax just enough to come up with an idea or a solution. That's how you can do it. Works really, really well. So creativity and imagination come with a little bit faster speed, a little higher gear, second gear. As we wake up during the course of the day, we then enter what's called the alpha state. It's awake and aware, but relatively relaxed. I call it the Cheech and Chong state because it's a counter to the really fast gear that you enter when you go to work, or if you're having a conversation or discussion with somebody. Then we'll get to fourth gear in a minute. But let's back up just for a second, not to confuse you. What if you get stuck in second gear? You're not awake and you're not asleep. You're in kind of a twilight zone. And this is called, and we can prove this using QEEG, this is actually called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Interesting. So we can nail that down using QEEG. Okay, so the idea here is you don't want to get stuck there because you do feel like you're in the twilight zone. In fact, one of the solutions for this is, at least in my office, from the medical perspective, they use speed. In other words, chemicals that speed up your brain. They use speed, and the people that are stuck in this second gear do much better because their brains operate faster. Kind of weird, because if you see a little kid running around the house and labeled with ADHD or hyperactivity disorder, you might think, that kid needs to slow down. Well, honest to goodness, the brain is trying to speed itself up, so that's why they're running around the house. And sugar, probably not a good idea. That makes the brain speed up even more. So you don't want to be stuck in second. No way. It's very difficult to think. And here's the wild part. A lot of the people who happen to get stuck in theta state are brilliant. They're brilliant people. Unfortunately, their brains are operating at a speed that doesn't show it. So let's move up to third gear. We're wide awake, more or less wide awake at this point. And this is where learning takes place. And this is also where what we call cruise control happens as well. Okay? You get stuck here, what happens over the long run is if too much of this is being used, it's because we've been stressed out for a long period of time and we've had to shift down from fourth gear into third gear just to save ourselves. So if I see a lot of this alpha state on a brain map, it'll tell me that there's been chronic long-term stress that sooner or later will exhaust the brain, and nobody wants that. In fact, that's talked about in some detail in my book that was printed in 2022, And this is interesting, I think, because of the audience that I typically get, moms, generally speaking. They run the health of the family for the most part, buy the food, cook the food, and so forth. Not in every family, but in most. So discovering the brain type or where you might get stuck is absolutely key, because if I know where you've been stuck, then I can show you how to unstick yourself and then go in between each and every one of these brain states as you feel necessary. And I'll get to that in a moment here too. So fourth gear is what happens to us when we made it to school, we're at work, we're having some sort of a debate with somebody. We have to really dig into the part of our brain that does deciding and thinking and decision making. Those three things are absolutely major. So fourth gear is where we are at our best when it comes to academics and those types of things. Now, if you get stuck here, they call it anxiety. If you get stuck there long enough, it's called seizure activity. So in other words, this is a brain that works really slow over here and a brain that works too fast. You want to be stuck on either end? You don't. You don't. And the whole idea behind what it is we do at Mom Brain 101 and Brain Body Science with my team is we help your brain shift from fourth to third to second to first and back again so that you can be the best you were designed to be. That's the whole idea, folks. So let's take this a little bit further. Imagine yourself, you've had a brain map, you want to know how you're doing. Perfect. That's what we're here to help you do. So let's take a look at this image right here. You'll notice there's a circle which represents the entire brain. And what you'll notice is I've made in purple 5% of all brain activity, and in the blue striped areas, 95% of all brain activity. Now, quick question here, answer this for yourselves. 5% of the brain is set aside to do one specific series of things, and the other 95% is meant to do the rest. Okay, multiple choice question. One part, I'm not going to tell you which one it is yet. One part is there to do your thinking. The other part is there to do everything else. And this is what fools most people, because we were told from little on up, right, that think about what you're doing. Believe it or not, 95% of the brain is set aside to do stuff other than thinking. Here's some examples. Heart function, lung function, liver, kidneys, you name it, pancreas, gallbladder, all of those internal organs, you don't have to think 1 second about for them to operate the way they were designed. Okay, so 5% of the brain was set aside to do one thing and one thing only as a general category. So thinking, planning, decision making. Executive function is what that is called as a whole. Oh, wow. Okay. So if we're only thinking 5% of the time, or if we're only using 5% of our energy to do the thinking, holy smokes, that's a pretty small proportion. So 1/20th of all brain activity is set aside to think. If you use more than that, okay, then you're going to steal from body activities. If you use less than that, well, then you're not going to be as sharp as you really want to be. And that's called cognition. There's lots of things going on there. So let's talk about the things that I look for. One is attention. All right, I want to be able to focus on a particular thought, idea, function, that type of thing. Number 2 is memory. Number 3 is anxiousness. Number 4 is depression. Okay, and number 5 is impulsivity. Your ability to say no, basically. Should I drink and drive? No. If your inhibitory complexes are working, that's right in the front of your head, you should say, nope, I'm going to get somebody else to drive me. I'm going to Uber it home. Good idea. Alrighty. So that's one thing I want you to keep in mind as well. This other circle represents the brain too. The left brain was designed to be in fourth gear. Most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, it was designed to be in fourth gear. The right brain was designed to be in third gear most of the time. Here's what's wild. If for whatever reason, this high-speed activity shifts to the right side of the forehead, every single time, there's going to be a tendency for anxiety. So here's the fix. Let's make sure that the fourth gear stays to the left side of the brain. Now, the other thing can happen too, and the reverse is true. If third gear kind of slips into the left prefrontal cortex, you'll tend to feel alone, left out, depressed. Now, we've all felt either this way or this way before. Does that mean our brains are fouled up? No, it doesn't. But if over a period of time that stays the way it is, if we've memorized this pattern because of our environment, could be from family activities, from friends that have shunned us, or work that is just really too difficult and wore us thin, then that is exactly what happens. There are other patterns that form too, and this is what I look for when I do a brain map for folks. So the idea here is, now that you know what we look for, you might decide for yourself, okay, before you have symptoms, you might decide that, gosh, you know what advantage would I have? What benefits would there be to have a brain map done? Well, number one, let's make sure you're connected. That's what one of the things the brain map can do. How much power is your brain putting out in all these different regions? Too much power in one spot can cause a certain set of symptoms. In fact, just in front of your right ear is your left ear, is a part of the brain that controls speech. Just behind the ear controls understanding language. And all sorts of other areas of the brain do their specific things. Even though if the brain's completely connected, it can make up a deficit in one spot by a surplus in another, and we can measure that as well. So having an idea how your brain works will then give you an indication, what do I do to make it better if you want to do that? Make it more efficient. Some folks that come into the office here want to lose some weight. Does brain function have anything to do with that? Nod your heads. Absolutely it does. So the idea here for you folks is just to have a little bit more information, and that's what it is Mom Brain 101 and Brain Body Science are here to do, is to help give you that little tidbit, one little extra step that can make you better day to day to day to day. So in the course of a few months, a year, however long you want to take to make that happen for yourselves, you'll have the ammunition to make your brain work as efficiently and in the best way it possibly can. So what I want you to do is, if you'd like to have more information, we're here to give you that. And there's some information down below someplace here to contact us, and we'd love to speak with you. If you just want to follow us, just do that. The more you know about how your brain works, the healthier, happier, more fulfilled, more powerful you're going to be. This is Dr. Doug Meints. It's been great being with you for the last few minutes. I'll see you soon.